Now, recently, we've been hearing more about the incidents of robberies taking place at the ATMs and those who are attacked after leaving the bank. This morning, we are joined by Chief Executive Officer of Air Support Tactical Security Limited, Mr. Dirk Barnes, to find out how we can be safe when banking. Mr. Barnes, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Good morning, guys, and good morning to Trinidad and Tobago, all of your viewers. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, Mr. Barnes, before we get into the meat of the discussion, I wanted to get your views in terms of the incidents we're seeing of the robberies that are happening when people are leaving the banks and even the ATMs. Is it an increase? Can we term it an increase, or is it something that's always been happening, but more focus has been placed on these robberies?
Well, you said right there, there is an increase, and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have been working to try to get on top of it. I've been involved in several of the security groups that deal with some of these places, Trin City Mall, Val Park, and other places along the East-West Corridor, because we're based in the East-West Corridor. And inside of those meetings, there's a lot of collaboration taking place between the security entities, because a lot of these banks, they have their own security departments as well. And they've been working with the TTPS to, try to isolate and come up with strategies to deal with these type of robberies. The challenge is right now is that these type of robberies, they are quick and they're becoming popular. And I'll have to put some of this on the media as well, because they glamorize some of these incidents. And you could see copycat theory taking place, contagion theory, which generally means that people who would not have normally done these type of offenses are more inclined to follow fashion or more inclined to get involved in the offenses, and we start to see an increase. So as these things evolve, I mean, unfortunately, crime like this is a knee-jerk type of scenario where we have to see it happen a few times, and then strategies are developed to be able to deal with what is happening. In the meantime, the victims are the ones who really have to start to look at coming up with new strategies themselves.
Yeah. Now, before we get into those strategies, you mentioned that there is, in fact, an increase. Do you see a particular period? We just came out of the July-August vacation. Do you see a particular period where these robberies happen? Because we are going into the Christmas season.
Well, to be quite honest, the from my perspective, I've only barely been looking at the media reports as well, and of course, what I'm seeing happening in these groups that I'm involved in terms of security groups. So I can't really put statistics before you. I'm not going to try to say that I can at this point in time. Now, with that being said, though, I do see the urgency coming from these security groups, these security managers, and their concerns that they are identifying that the amount of times these offenses are being committed, it's a bit more this year than it was last year. So that's why I can say with some degree of confidence that there is an increase. However, I can't really get any statistics to say, well, there has been an increase for the period of July, August this year over the same period last year. I can only make an assumption, and I don't want to quantify that right now on your show.
Of course. So we'll pause on that for now. But question, Mr. Barnes, in terms of the planning of these type of activities, is it planned or is it just a spur of the moment sort of thing that a burglar or a robber will just decide to do, whether it is rob somebody on the moment or at the moment, or plan to have this done?
No, 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 this is planned. For example, when I see some of the videos of the surveillance that is taken at the banks and even in the environs of the banks, there is normally a vehicle that is performing their own surveillance, and then sometime that vehicle might be following a person who is leaving the bank. And at that point in time, you hear about the person who is robbed at their home, where there's more surveillance information that is shared. So we know that these are planned events. It's not that they just seize the opportunity and point out someone and say, okay, this is the person we're going.
Yeah. And in terms of the involvement of bank staff, Mr. Barnes, I have to ask, because a lot of these things have been happening more and more. What is the possibility of staff at the bank being involved in these robberies?
Well, again, based on the conversations I've had with security managers, even though that might be a concern to them, there is no evidence really and truly that is proving that. And then too, it is the selection of victims are sometimes a bit sporadic, it's a bit random, which doesn't seem to suggest that staff themselves might be giving information, but it is a theory that is being looked into. I don't have any information at this point in time to suggest that any member of staff of any one of the local banks have been investigated or charged for an offense. So I wouldn't want to say that. My own suspicions is that at some point in time, somebody might be giving information, but I don't have any proof of that.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the strategies now, especially as it relates to the ATMs, and let's look at it in the context of time. Are you at a greater risk if you're going to the ATM at night as opposed to daytime? And what are some of the strategies that you can use to ensure your safety?
Well, I would not say that you are at greater risk at night because if you look at a lot of these offenses when they're committed, people have been saying that they went to the bank during the day and it's bank transactions they were conducting. Now, yes, you can be robbed if you go to the ATM at night. There aren't many reports of that happening, really and truly. And I'm not talking about the media reports. Now I'm talking about what's happening in the security circles.
Right.
But the daytime reports are more prevalent. Now, these things are coming because clearly some of the victims they have routines, and the ones who have routines who take out cash for whatever their businesses or personal reasons, it is being known to these offenders. So you have to start to look at now, where your information is being shared, how it's being shared, and ensure that you can keep some of those things to yourself. If you do have to carry cash, and I say if you do because one of the strategies is to try to move with not carrying cash, or try to operate without cash.
Right. And let's look also at the ones who are being robbed at the homes. I know some people are saying that maybe when you come out of the bank, you have a driver waiting, but they may not have that privilege to have a driver. So if you are coming out of the bank with a large sum of money, any tips for them or how you can prevent yourself from being followed?
Well, let's get first to the large sum of money. I know that recently the banks increased the amount of money that you could withdraw, and especially from the ATMs and stuff like that. I would want to encourage more people to move to a cashless type of operation, where you do online transfers, so you don't have to go to the bank. That's number one. You would not have to be carrying cash. Now, I have spoken to a lot of people who come to me for advice on these particular matters, and we sit down with them and we try to look at where their vulnerabilities are. And their vulnerabilities really reside on the thing. So there are a lot of people today think that you must have cash to be able to conduct a transactions, buying a used car. That was the number one. Or paying contractors when they're working on your home, things like that. Remember, when a contractor is working at your home, people who are passing, they're seeing these things, so they know that eh, payments have to be made, so they're going to start to mark you. So you should start looking at paying the contractors via online transfers
Yeah.
or even through managers' checks or any of these different things. So anything that limits the amount of traffic you have to do to the bank and the also limits the amount of cash that you have to remove from the bank is what is going to be your immediate charge. You're the first thing you should look at, or the advice that we normally give to our clients.
Yeah. And in terms of the being followed home, is it that if you think someone is following you, you can take an off route to the police station, that sort of thing, or maybe pass your home and go a different route?
Well, I would want to say you go straight to police station if it is you feel that you're being followed. I mean, don't take any chances and try to run counter surveillance. We have passed that type of strategy a while now. I mean, that was
Yeah.
some advice I've given a couple of years ago. Now I tell everybody if you get that spidey sense that something is wrong, go straight to a police station, walk into the station, speak to the officers, let them know you're being followed or something. I think you're being followed. But don't drive around and things like that. But when you get home, you have to be very observant. Now, thieves have evolved and these offenders have evolved. I used to give the advice when I tell people, when you reach home, if you see a car, idle occupants on board, pass your house straight, make a block, go around the corner, stuff like that. Well, they have caught on to that. So what they do now is they don't park on your street. They wait till you turn onto the street, but by that time, the offenders are sometimes waiting at your home or they're waiting in a property close by. So as far as the neighborhood is concerned, there's no vehicle parked up and being idle. Now, things like cameras, cameras are not a security device. They don't jump off your wall and, beat up an offender and put handcuffs on him. It's a situational awareness type of um, security product. And when you start to rely heavily on the technology part of it and think, well, okay, I'm safe now. This can't happen to me. You're wrong.
Hmm.
What is the biggest benefit to security and protection is the human element coming from the police, or the local law enforcement or private law enforcement, which is private security companies. Those are the things that will combat the actual offender if it is he chooses you and makes you a victim. And this is where some of the charges coming in. So recently I heard the police suggesting that, we look at hiring private security companies. Well, they are behind the ball with that. Private security companies, the private security industry exists, you know, how many years now? Decades now. So people have been doing that already. And putting that reminder outside there is something that is kind of repetitive. I think what needs to happen now is that people have to start to give the police service advice because they don't seem to have the strategies that are required to deal with these particular issues. But I also want to implore that the media themselves start to take stock of what it is they're promoting in their reports. I mean, I understand that there's a requirement of the media to get the message out there, but sometimes in glamorizing certain things, you are creating the phenomena, you're creating the situation, which is, exacerbating and making it worse in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, I also want to say, Mr. Barnes, you mentioned the private security firms, but we have seen instances as well where companies are also being robbed. And so how do we battle that, knowing that you're a company and you hire a private security firm, but you're also at risk of being robbed by these negative forces?
All right, so let me first quantify my next statement by hitting your disclaimer. I own a security company where we go out into the field to deal with criminal elements, and violent offenders on top of that. And unlike a person who might have spoken before me, I am one of those people who go out with my officers. I'm out in the field with them. So I just want to make sure and say that first. The challenges that we have right now is that as time goes on, and technology evolves, as we've seen recently in a report where the criminal elements, their armorers are using 3D printing technology, which isn't really there yet. 3D printing technology, in terms of a reliability of a firearm, it's not there as yet. So I'm seeing it. It means that they're working, they're trying. Criminal elements are evolving, but the technology isn't ready. What it does mean, however, is that the commissioner of police has to realize the cries of the security companies because she has superintendents over all of the private security companies, the estate police, as well as she's responsible for the issuance of FUECs, which is the Firearms User Employee Certificate for firearms for the security industry.
Right.
Now, I am bringing this up because when you have one person who has all of this responsibility, you have crime increasing, and then you see incidents like what happened recently with the telecom officer that was killed. You have to start to ask yourself, as a commissioner, what more can I do? Now, Mr. Derek Richardson from the Estate Police Association said that, listen, we have a really strange thing here that you're giving firearm officers 25 rounds and you have criminals who are changing magazines when they do a recovery. That's a recovery, sorry, an offense. So what is the rationale for 25 rounds?
Yeah.
You know, we need to increase our ammunition capacity because we are not going to survive with 25 rounds. And we are out there sometimes with your police officers working on different operations, and your police officers are well equipped. So why are
No,
you not
Mr. Barnes, I
equipping us?
just want to stick a pin in that only because we're out of time. But I just have
Sure.
one more question to ask you quickly. We were talking about the online banking and how we should not be withdrawing that, but maybe look to see how we can do online transfers. I know that some banks and ATMs also have that contactless card where you don't necessarily have to no longer put in your card, but you can tap it as a security measure. Just with 30 seconds remaining quickly, is that a safer alternative choice?
Well, what that is going to be doing is removing the chance of somebody duplicating your card or learning your PIN, stuff like that. So that is what the real benefits of the contactless technology comes from. But if you really think about it, when you go to an ATM at a very odd time and you use that contactless technology, you can still be robbed of the cash that you withdraw. So you would really want to be in a scenario where you're not using cash or not carrying about large amounts of cash. And that's why I'm suggesting that you should always be looking at online transactions wherever possible and encourage your vendors, the people that you have to pay, to accept an online transaction for that particular reason.
Yeah. Mr. Barnes, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Of course, we're going to continue the conversation, but for now, we will take your tips so that we can be safe at the financial institutions. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
And that was Mr. Dirk Barnes, the CEO of Air Support Tactical Security Limited, giving us some tips on how we can be safe at the ATMs and also when conducting our banking transactions. You're on the Now Morning Show. Stay with us. We have so much more coming up on the show.